What's up, Miniatures Paintbrush Legion? This is Rob, your host, and welcome to Pro Painted. So often, we as miniature painters are scrolling through the interwebs for inspiration, and we come across a piece that truly impresses us, and we show it to others and joke how we're gonna break our brushes because of the amazing work that was done, and then we move on. But who are the people behind the beautiful artwork? Well, this is why I created this series, to honor those people behind the art. So today we're traveling here to the United States with Caleb Wissenback. Welcome back, TMP fans. This is Rob, your host, and I am joined today by the amazing, prolific painter, Caleb Wissenback, who has been part of this community, growing it with CK Studios and connecting artists with their respective painters, people who are hobbyists within the community. Epic person to beat, epic paint jobs, things to learn, awesome teacher, and definitely a force in this community. Guys, if you don't know who Caleb Wissenback is, I encourage you to find out more and stay tuned to this record. And thank you so much, Caleb, for joining us today. Thank you for spending this time with us, who is amazing.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Man, hey, thanks for having me back on. I know it's been a bit since I've been on. So much has been happening. I mean, with everything that happened with the COVID and everything slowed us all down, and if I feel like we're finally kind of getting back into our stride on things. And yeah, so I'm excited, man. I'm excited to be back on, and definitely excited to talk Angron and everything like that. So
For those of you who don't know, a recent article came out for Angron painting and different artists, and Caleb's was part of that, And so, if you were to introduce yourself to the world in a few words, how would you, as an artist, introduce yourself to the entire community?
um, man, wow, but yeah, if I had to like introduce myself, obviously, I would start out, I'm CK Studios. I'm half of, or one of two, artists that make up CK Studios. CK Studios probably, our biggest, I don't want to say like accomplishment, but kind of, what we're doing with the hobby community in general. First off, I'm a painter and I'm a gamer. That's me in a nutshell. I started out gaming, moved into painting, got into painting, um, enjoy painting so much so, and wanted to just share it. And that's what we got into, and that's CK Studios. And my partner Kat Jackson, again, she's a huge gamer. She loves board games of any type. Uh, card games, board games, whatever. If it entails games, she loves doing it. And we started CK Studios. Just, that's our hobby. It's our side time. We both have full-time jobs and we have to do the grind. I guess, there's a lot of us that got to do the grind, but for our relaxation, for our fun, for whatever is painting. And we've just, man, it just seems like everything's fallen in place, and we get to go travel to different places, and we go to all these conventions, and we get to work with all these wonderful companies, and enjoy working with a lot of the community members. I hate to use the word influencers, but the influencers in this community. Yeah, I think that's really what kind of makes us do what we do. So I know it's pretty long-winded, but in a nutshell, yeah, we're gamers and painters.
All right, so what did you always know that you wanted to be a miniature painter? How did you start?
No, actually, I was never really into art or any of that stuff. I got introduced to Warhammer back in like 1987. I had some friends that role played. They liked playing Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, and I kind of saw it, but I just wasn't really into like the fantasy genre, fantasy themes and stuff like that. But we got into playing a couple of role play games. One was called Twilight 2000, and it was like the idea was that like World War III had broken out. I mean, this is back, late 80s where the Cold War was in effect, and everybody was waiting for the Soviets to invade Germany and stuff like that. And that was kind of the role play game, and it was really fun. And then one day, my buddy brought this game over, and he's like, "You got to check out this game. It's kind of like role play. It's kind of like what we're doing, but it uses figures. It uses these little models." And I'd always been a model guy. I loved building models like tanks and stuff like that. I never was really good at painting them or anything like that. I just like building models. I've always been kind of a little bit of interest in historical warfare and stuff like that. I love war movies and everything like that when I grew up as a kid. So yeah, he showed me this game, and it was called Warhammer 40K Rogue Trader. And I played it for like a summer or two. I want to say like a summer, maybe half a year. And then, life got in the way. I got into high school and started doing what high school kids do. And I never was really part of gaming or anything like that. I played a little bit of video games and stuff like that, but not big into that. I was very much into like outdoor sports and stuff. I was a professional snowboarder, motocross, things like that, and I did end up getting into gaming a little bit later, much later in life. I got into gaming. I was playing like EverQuest and stuff like that. And long story there, I ended up getting hurt on a motorcycle and was bedridden for like 6 months. And I just played EverQuest and stuff like that, and it got me into gaming. And I had to stop. I was so addicted to that game. When World of Warcraft came out, I was just like obsessed with that game. I couldn't stop playing it. And finally, I just had to cut cold turkey, and I was so bored. And I just happened to be walking by a hobby store one day, local hobby store in Reno, and I saw the Space Marines. And one thing that I never kind of quit was I love reading books. So I was always reading novels. I loved all the Forgotten Realm stuff, the Dragonlance, everything that we all grew up with for fantasy realm and all that stuff. Of course, Tolkien and all of that stuff. Shannara, everything like that. But I was reading I don't even know if it was Black Library at the time yet. Maybe it was, but I was reading the Soul Drinker omnibus of all things, and I was just like, man, I remember this 40K, and I loved the fluff of it. I loved all the background story and all the books and all that stuff. Walked by that store, and I just happened to walk in, and one of the things that caught my eye, and I always loved it from back in Road Trader and the Compendium and all that stuff, were the Terminators. Like, they were just such a cool model. And I walked in there, and they had a librarian, a Terminator librarian in the blister pack. And like, I'm not playing games anymore. I'm kind of bored at home, and I want something to do in the evening. So I bought that model, and I started painting it. And so a family member of mine, one of my uncles that used to play 40K with me back in Rogue Trader, he came by one day, and he looked at it, and he's like, "Oh, that is so cool. You remember this? You remember that?" And so he's like, "Hey, let's go down to the hobby store." And so we went down to the hobby store, and they had a Black Reach. Yeah, Black Reach box. Like, it was on clearance. And so we snagged that, and we started playing with that a little bit. But he had played Eldar when he had originally started, back in Rogue Trader Day. And so he was like, man, I don't really like the orcs. I'm going to buy some Eldar. And long story short, you know how that goes. You buy 2 boxes, armies, and we were playing big time. And I really got into 40K. I mean, I loved it, and I loved the competition side of it. I loved the techniques. Got into a really fun group of guys in Reno that they were all big into playing like Ard Boys, and they went to Depticon, and they'd go to Bay Area Open when that was first starting, and they hit all these tournaments, and we really got into that. But I found that I just had a knack for painting. I just really enjoyed it, and it was one of those things where it was relaxation. You come home from work and sit down and turn on some music and start painting a miniature. And I just super enjoyed it. The local store had a little paint contest, and I entered it bought a squad of Harlequins to paint for and I did the checkers on them and I did all that stuff and painted them up pretty good. I was really happy with them. And I got second place. I was pretty excited. I got second place, but the guy that beat me was Will Hahn, and Will Hahn was I shouldn't say is a multi-time Golden Demon winner. And the judge of the paint event was another multi-time Golden Demon winner named Bryce Coconut. Uh, Both of them local guys, and they were like, "Man, you should hang out with us and paint some more." So I started hanging out with them. They're like, "Let's take those Harlequins a little further." So I started learning like blending and filtering and really learning how to start to adjust a model and use like all the techniques we use for painting now. And those guys drugged me to a games day that year in Chicago, and I entered that squad, got a finisher's pin. So I was super excited about that. Um, but I got to go to dinner with they called it Team North America at the time, and it was like all the Golden Demon winners that were pretty much in the North America area. Chris Bohr, gosh, Eric, all of them. I could just name all the guys. It was so much fun. You're sitting around this table and they start breaking out all their models and they're sending around their models for what they're going to enter into Golden Demons. And you're just looking at the level of painting. The Slayer sword that won it that year was sitting at the table there, and uh, Eric, Swenson was there, and Boyd was there, and yeah. So there's there was probably 50 or 60 Golden Demons between all the guys at the table. There was like 8 Slayer swords at the time, something like that. Crazy. And yeah, I just got the itch from that point. That's when painting kind of took over and gaming took a little step back. I was still tournament playing. I love going to Adepticon and playing tournaments, but my goal shifted a little bit. I wanted to beat Wapple for best paint, so I really pushed my painting. I never beat him. I never beat him. He'd always get me on the final scores because of the popular choice. He'd always. I mean, and if anybody's seen Wapple's painting, you guys know what I'm. His stuff is so good. You know. Um, but yeah, it introduced me to this other side of the hobby besides just gaming, and yeah, since then that took off. I started competition painting, loved it. I want to say in 2000, so that was in like 2000, the end of 2009, 2010 when I got into it. I went to that first Golden Demon, and then in 2012, yeah, I think like 2012, I won my first Demon. Um, and from there it just took off. And then I got a phone call one day. Nova was looking for a couple of artists to help out with. They had a budding program. They wanted to do some instruction, and I'd been doing like some little local things here and there. I went down and at ReaperCon one year, I taught like 1 or 2 classes. Nothing, I was just kind of just doing it. I was doing some local stuff, and Nova said, "Yeah, would you like to come over and teach at our event?" And so I showed up there. It was cool. One of my classes had 1 student in it. Another class, no student showed up. So it was a pretty late class, and I was just like, man, is this for me? But as things progressed that year, just everything was taken off. Started doing Reaper. Got invited to teach at Adepticon. That that next year, Nova, like I want to say, like my classes sold out, and at that point, I was like, man, I think I enjoy teaching more than I like competing and doing all of that. Like it was really fun. I mean, I had these great instructors, between Bryce and Will that, I mean, they just showed me like freely. They showed me everything. And coming from like competitions like snowboarding and motocross and stuff like that, your competition doesn't teach you their secret. You don't share what's making you successful. And you got into this painting hobby, and everybody's like, "Man, how did you do that? You just won." And I remember sitting there looking at Todd Swanson's um, Lictor that year that he won the Slayer sword with, and I'm like, "How did you do that?" And he was showing me like the little stripe. And he's like, "Oh, it's easy. Look, this is what I did." And he's like showing you all stuff, and I was just like, "Man, it's such a great community, and that just really started that fire for getting into more of sharing of the community. And So started teaching way more. Hooked up with Chung from Wargamers Consortium, Chung, Lester, and all of those guys. I mean, if you want to talk about influencers, I'd say they were like the OG. They were like the first guys to start that. They were in YouTube before really anybody else was. Um, so they kind of took me under their wing, and they wanted to start developing programs, and we started developing a big paint program. We called it the funny. It's been used for a couple of other things now, but we had called it the miniature mentor program. And the idea was that we got like these higher end painters to come in and mentor other people, teach them. We all were taught kind of freely, so we wanted to make sure that we were sharing that. And that program was, yeah, we did some stuff on DVDs, but yeah, but we started really building like a live personal program to where that's how I got introduced to Kat. Kat had just started. Um, oh my goodness, she's gonna kill me. I can't remember. The Hobby Hangout. She had just started the Hobby Hangout, and that was kind of new. These Facebook groups that you could get into and share stuff, and started posting videos, and we would share all the videos up onto YouTube and stuff through the Hobby Hangout and all that stuff. So that's kind of how I met Kat, and I really wanted like the artists that we had. I had AJ Thornton and oh gosh, everybody's going to kill me. I don't remember. Seth Amston, all of us were all involved in this, building this program. We started building the paint program, paint competitions. We did the Draconic Awards. We started those at the first LVO. We did them at BAO and Bay Area Open, all of those. We started doing the Draconic Awards. And yeah, it just, took off and was really enjoying all that stuff. And then, Chung, I think that, Chung started kind of losing a little bit of interest in doing that. He definitely wanted to kind of move to other areas. And so Kat just came in one day and she's like, well, let's build something that's ours. And I was like, all right, what do you think? We were driving back from Kingdom Con. We were down in San Diego, and it's like a 9-hour drive back. And we're just sitting there brainstorming, like, what do we want to do? And that's how CK Studio started. That was the birth of it right there. And I was scheduled that year. I had planned some stuff with the guys from an old podcast, the Beer and Bolters. Had planned some stuff with them to do a little airbrushing class. And so we took that opportunity to start the first CK Studios 101 class. And that was our first one, our maiden voyage. And yeah, that we had so much fun. And since then, it's been just nothing but just enjoyable experiences. We've gotten to travel everywhere. We got to go up into Canada. We taught a bunch in Canada. We got to go over to Europe. We went to Copenhagen, and we've been all over UK. We got to go in with Games Workshop. They invited us over to check out some stuff, some of the products that they were developing at the time that we were going to get to see in the future come out. And we got to teach a lot of their artists, like, our techniques. That was an experience. I remember I had to go in there, and the Forge World artists came in for the class. I had to teach the Forge World artists, and it's Borja and I just, these guys that I've just, you're just like, you oogle their painting. It's like so amazing, and I'm like, I got to teach these guys. Oh, I was so nervous, so nervous. And sat there and did the class. And at one point they stopped me and they're like, wait a minute, you just put that paint straight in and you didn't do this? And I mean, we're using their product. And at that point I just realized, hey, I got something I can even show these guys. And that was such a like a confidence builder at that point. And we really took off at that point. And yeah, now we're where we're at. We're just doing our thing.
Speaking of giants, I know that I had interviewed Eric Swinson not too long ago, and he is an absolute legend in this industry. And I was really honored to be able to have him on the show and speak to him. He just won Montes and Savino at Best in Show, which is absolutely outstanding. He is a prolific painter, and I always try to gain from everyone I'm around, and I just try to better myself and learn techniques. Yeah, always. Yeah, he's really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Eric Swinson. We call him East Coast Will because there's two Wilhans. The Wilhan that I was mentioning earlier is West Coast Will. So East Coast Will, then everybody calls him kind of the young Will or whatever. I call him Biggie Will because East Coast, West Coast. Um, uh, yeah, some of the artists coming up right now are just so, and I shouldn't say coming up. I mean, these guys have hit their stride. Um, but yeah, the painting that they're doing, Eric's stuff is so good, so good. Oh, yeah.
So, in what words would you use to describe your painting style?
Man, my painting style, my gosh, that is such a hard question. One of the things I've always like, I feel is that each model always wants to be painted its own way. And when I look at a model, um, they I this sounds kind of weird, but it's almost like they talk to you and they tell you how they want to be painted. You look at it, you get that idea in your head, like I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to paint it this way, I want to paint it that way. And because of that, I've always just been really open to trying to learn anything and everything. There's not an artist out there that I don't want to follow and see some of their techniques because I run to that model that I want to use that technique for. And because of that, um, I think for a while I didn't really develop a style, but since we've taken up airbrushing so much, and since I've developed my painting from airbrushing, I've taken on like this new I've taken on this new relationship with light. Like before before I was really airbrushing, I was really busy with trying to put the right technique on a model, trying to blend properly, trying to make sure that I'm getting very smooth blends, perfect blends. I want my shadows to be perfect and I want my transitions to be perfect and all that stuff. And you pick up the airbrush and there were other factors that played into it. Taking Alfonso's color theory class was one of those that it wasn't necessarily the color and all that stuff. It was the idea of how everything comes together to create shape and value. And I realized by learning this stuff from Alfonso, by learning this stuff from Rafa Pica and from Roman, going with these artists that they're not necessarily, I mean, they're all enormously talented artists, but they're not really interested in the competition style. They're not worried about painting perfect and making sure that your blends are perfect and how do you win a golden demon and how do you win a crystal brush and all that stuff. Those guys were all about creating. They just want to create. And learning that and understanding that is what kind of helped me develop this relationship with light. And so now I really feel like I don't necessarily paint with paints or I don't paint with colors. I teach all my students is we're going to paint with light. We're going to build our light. We're going to start to create shape and value out of light. And because of that, my style has definitely developed a little different. And I have this kind of a vibrant, man, I don't know exactly how to call it. And I'm thinking about like, the horse that I just painted and Angron that I just painted. Um, I'm really interested in controlling light and controlling every aspect of how the light is reflecting. I don't tend to paint with a lot of metallics anymore because I don't like the way it doesn't shift the light. I'm not controlling the light. I teach a lot of those classes. I really love like my armature class or my night class and stuff like that, where we're dry brushing with metallics and all that stuff. It's really fun classes to develop and push. But when it comes to my personal painting, I'm finding I'm painting with a lot more matte paint, a lot more thick paint, and because of it, my painting I feel is a little more vibrant now. It's definitely a change from my early stuff. My early stuff, I was painting very much in that we call it French blending was the term at the time, but it's a very we painted with a lot of glazes, and because of the glazes, your painting is more realistic looking, but it gets a little muddy. It gets a little softer, it gets a little more desaturated, things like that. And I've changed, and looking at painters like Sergio, right, building that contrast, building that light, shifting it, putting a lot of vibrancy into your painting. Um, yeah, I've kind of moved that way. So I feel maybe there's like a little bit of a mix between those. I definitely have my unique take on it. I don't know if it's a good unique take or a bad unique take, but it's got a little take to it. Um, so yeah, my painting is really just a hodgepodge of a lot of the artists that have influenced me.
So many things to try, right? There's so many things to investigate and learn from, and really pick up some. Yeah, it's like the Chimera paint. That's a new line. Like I want to try and I want to develop to change my actual painting style. And there's a lot of that's highly pigmented, so you really can get some popping when it comes to that. I mean, have you ever tried any of the Chimera paints?
Yes. So I have a couple sets. Cat just got me the non-metallic metal set, the um, land set. Um, I keep having this discussion with Will, with Biggie Will, East Coast Will. Um, he's really encouraging me to start mixing paints more and really pushing that envelope, because I feel that's one of the areas that I'm lacking. I am definitely a slightly lazier painter, to where if I have that color, I would rather grab that color out of my myriad of paints than take the 5 paints that I need to make that color. So I haven't seen the the real benefits of the Chimera paint, and I understand it's like the isolated single pigment, very control. You're controlling color. I don't have that same relationship with color that I have with light yet. So I'm not into those nuances yet, and Will's really pushing me to start to try to push that way. So I do like them. The My biggest problem with the Chimera, and I'm looking up as I'm speaking, I'm also a brush licker. I I lick my brush, and Chimera has this slightly odd taste to me that I can't explain it. I tell some people sometimes it almost tastes like um, spoiled coffee creamer. So it takes me away from painting with them a little bit. I know that is the stupidest reason to not paint with but it does take me away from them a little bit. I'm trying to introduce them more into my painting. I just recently I like to flip my paints. I feel a lot of times I'll get, because I'm a lazy painter, that I will get stuck with a line of paint and I'll only use those paints. They're my favorite paints there. I know how this color works. I know how that color works. I know how this color is going to react with that color, blah, 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 blah. So I like to go in and flip my paints. And I just recently flipped all of my paints. I got rid of all of my GW, got rid of all of my Vallejo, got rid of all of my I went with Pro Acryl and Scale, and I was really trying to push that. The Pro Acryl I was using more as like my base coats, because I love Scale 75, but it's for me, it feels very transparent. Uh, so they're wonderful for creating transitions and glazing and cheat. You can use pretty much a thick body. You don't have to thin at all, and still get really nice transitions and all that stuff. That's again one of those influences from Roman and Rafa. Sitting down and taking classes with them, and they're like, I always was taught thin your paints. Thin your paints. Like the first thing you're told is, oh, when you start painting, is thin your paints. You're gonna lose detail. You're not gonna blend. You're not gonna do this if you don't thin your paints. And those guys are like taking paint right out of the pot, right onto their palette, and the model, and you're like, how, what, no, blew my mind. And then they taught me, like, control how much paint is on your brush. You learn that control, and so I really don't thin my paints anymore. I'm still using a wet palette, but it's very thick paint. I'm unloading my brush to where I don't have very much paint. And some of my students that might be watching this, they're all nodding, because I really push that on my students now, is kind of break that idea you got to thin paint. The more opaque your paint is, the more control you have. And then you can adjust your paint on the model. You can adjust your paint on the palette, all of that stuff. But when you just instantly go in and start thinning all your paints, you kind of lose a little control. And then that's just my personal thought. Some other people are like, oh no, I always did my paint, and that's all this stuff about, right? Learning from all these artists, developing all this stuff. So when I get to cheat, like using the scale 75 to do those blends without having to thin them and stuff like that, I really like the scale. In the meantime, I picked up a bunch of the scale artist acrylics, the tube paints. I love it. But again, licking your brush, those things taste funny. I don't think I should be licking my brush with those. So I am thinking about that. And then Pro Acryl is slowly being pushed out, because I've been using a lot of the AK third gen. Seth really got that, and man, I like the AK third gen. So like right now, I'm using a mix of scale, AK, and Pro Acryl. That's kind of my go-tos. Trying to work the Chimera into it. I want to make Will happy. I want to start mixing my paints more. So I'm gonna work on playing with those a bit more.
I completely understand. Like, I have a certain set of paints that I just go to all the time. And it's just, I have an entire paint rack behind me, but, I just keep going to the same things. In fact, I have one of those nail racks so I can just keep the same paints in front of me. But I think I should break that habit.
Yeah, I mean, I had to force myself to do it. Because I would go back to the same spot on the rack. I had these racks with like 300 paints, and I go back to the same spot on the rack, and I'm like, I got to stop. I want to develop and grow. So I forced myself into changing it. And I think that's part of why my painting has also changed, is pushing more vibrancy, using these colors and these paints that are more vibrant, and allow myself to play with them. And then of course the inks. I'll never get rid of the inks. I'm always using inks. So.
Oh, I'm totally using inks. It's so fine to get those nice transitions and blends. You use the ink, just throw it into your airbrush and go. But you have a lot of influences. So what was the best piece of advice you were ever given, like from another painter to you?
Oh, best piece of advice. You know, raw. What's the best piece of advice? I mean, the best piece of advice, like, that's ever said, and it sounds really simple, is paint bravely. Like, don't, don't be afraid to push models. And I was the same way when I first started painting. You get this really nice model that you paid a bunch of money for, and it's this one-off or whatever collectors did, and you're like, I'm gonna put it away because I'm afraid to ruin it. And those are the models that push you, because those are the models you're super excited to do the best on. And if you're brave with that and you don't mind maybe making a couple mistakes, maybe not getting things, but the biggest growth you have is when you make mistakes. Um, when you hit those hard spots. Competition painting was huge for me because of that. Competition painting, to me, I'm such a competitive person that um, I wasn't. When you hit that point where you're painting a model just for yourself, you're kind of like, this is good enough. I'm really struggling with this. I've done enough here. I'm going to put it away. Competition, you're just like, I have to work through this. I got to figure this out. And you'll struggle for days. Days. You might paint the same surface 6 times. And you're just so frustrated. And then all of a sudden, it just clicks. Just you did something and it clicks. And all of a sudden, you get that next growth of painting. And that's from that painting bravely. So yeah, that would definitely be my biggest, like, if it was like a one liner, it'd be paint bravely. Other than that, you just absorb all the information you can, and don't be afraid to try stuff that other people around you might say you not to use or not to do. Or if it works for somebody, at least give it a try. It might work for you. It might be something you really like. So
I always try to challenge myself, always try to grow. I take these classes. I mean, I love going to, I don't even play at the tournaments. I actually just take the classes in order to push my painting, and I always want to get better because I want to compete.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, I'm always looking for advice. I'm always looking for feedback. Like when I go to these shows, even if I don't win, like it's not about the win as much as me growing as a painter and getting better.
Yeah, it's creating that growth.
Yeah. So, what was, which painted miniature is your favorite or means the most to you?
Oh, I mean, uh, the Raven Guard captain I painted that I won the Golden Demon with, that one means a lot just because of the growth on that one. That was such a push. That was one of those models that I just sat and struggled on. And painted. You show up at the event and you're kind of down on it, and you're just like, man, you're looking at the stuff in the cabinet, and you're just like, I'm not even gonna place. And then you end up, getting a silver out of it. I was just like, whoa, So that's a huge one. Another one, I mean, I have a couple. Another one was a bust that I painted and entered crystal brush with it and placed in that crystal brush. And I was super excited about that because it was the category that Kirill Kanev was in. Kirill was in that category. Ben was in that category. There were so many high-end painters that were in that category, and to trophy in that one was huge. Because again, it was one of those models where you know all the mistakes of your models. So getting those. Angron, the new Angron is really up there. I really enjoyed painting him, but with how my painting has developed and how I've kind of shifted, I haven't really painted a competition model in a couple of years. I want to say like the last competition model I painted was probably that Kingdom Death Dark Paladin that that I entered in at Gen Con a couple of years ago. Other than that, I haven't really painted to a competition level, and Angron was by no means competition level, but I used a bunch of the techniques and aspects that I would really try to do on a competition model. And I really felt that was a really good example. I don't know if example, but it really showed where my painting has gone to, like how I've developed my light technique and all that stuff. I've really been working on my non-metallic metals for the last couple of like 2 years. I've been just working on non-metallic metals, just trying to refine it, get it right, try to figure out why are there reflections where they are, why all that stuff. And those of you that are learning non-metallic metals, you guys know my struggle, trying to understand all that stuff and cheat the eye and all that stuff. And I don't know, that model was just incredibly fun to paint. Really felt like I got to flex a bit on it. Like I really got to show what I could do and where it was. I made that comment in a couple of posts that I wish I'd had more time with it, because I'd love to take that model to a higher level, do the refinement that I didn't get to do.
What would you say your biggest achievement is? I mean, to date, out of all the things that you've ever done, what would be the biggest?
My biggest achievement, I'd say my biggest achievement is CK Studios. What we're doing now, and kind of get choked up on it. It's so cool. But what we get to do with the community, I mean, we get to influence so many artists, really building on people. And we hear that all the time. We were at LVO and walking down the hallway, we get stopped by a guy, and he's like, dude, I got to tell you, I took your class at San Diego, or one of the classes. I took your class there, and it's changed my painting. And I'm so excited now, and I'm entering into the competition. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And you're just like, that's awesome. So yeah, I'd say that's CK Studios, definitely.
I see that you're in your studio right now. Is that like an official studio, or do you paint at home, or what do you have going on there?
Oh yeah. This is a well, I guess about a year and a half ago, my son moved out, went to college, and so I procured his room, and I've kind of set it up, and um, it's got a little shared space. It's got to be a little bit of an office and stuff like that. But yeah, that's where I.
Oh yeah, it looks kind of a little different than last time.
The last time we interviewed, I was actually out in the garage. I had like kind of sectioned off part of the garage and sheetrocked it in and made like this. It was small. It was so small and tight. And now I have a whole room, so I get to put up all my artwork and do all that stuff. So,
All right, so next question. If you are to begin your painting day to sit down and paint, how do you organize your day?
oh, if I got to sit down and paint, man, it depends on where it depends on where I'm at. If I'm coming off of another project, the first thing I got to do is I got to clean up my work area. I can't handle a lot of clutter around my work area. I've got to kind of clean that up, and then the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down with that model. I'm going to let it kind of talk to me. I'm going to look at it and figure out, like, how do I want to paint this? Where am I kind of going at? And then I'm going to look at my paints and figure out, kind of figure my basic palette. Um, there's a couple of books out there that I always like really kind of stress to up and coming painters, to students and stuff like that, to look at. The first obviously is the Figopedia Volume 1. But the second one that I really like to tell people about is James Gurney's Color and Light. And it's not a miniature painting book at all. It's traditional painting. It's canvas painting. But in it really talks about how to develop a palette, how to kind of figure out how your colors are going to work. And so it teaches you to kind of create what are called gamuts. And gamuts are like the range of colors that you're going to use and stuff like that. And that's where those influences, right? Rafa, Alfonso, those guys really teach you to sit down and develop that color, that intimacy with color, to figure out like what your recipes are going to be, and what kind of atmosphere are you trying to put with the model? What is he going to look like? What is he going to do? Where is he at? All that stuff. So I'm going to sit down with my paints, and I'm going to kind of determine like that atmosphere. And then what I like to do is just start off with that kind of bravely painting. I'm going to put a couple of those colors on my palette, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to start doing some sketching. I'm going to go in and just start working the light around the model. I'm not really worried about being real perfect, being real clean. Just kind of sketch things out, figure out where I'm at. And once that happens, then you'll start figuring like how to start moving around the model. And that's when your recipes will develop. At that point, you're going to start, well, I really like this color in here, and I've got my light here, so maybe this blue needs to shift to a little purple, or maybe I want this blue a little warmer. You're going to start playing with those colors there. But yeah, definitely, I do need to start out and kind of sketch my way through the model a bit.
I know how you shape things. I mean, I've read this book by James Gurney, Color and Light, A Guide for the Realist Painter, where it really shows how you create with light, how you create with color, how you really analyze things like secondary and tertiary colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's definitely like what I was talking about is I paint with light. So I'm going to start building the light. I'm going to start developing the light, and I paint with colors. I don't really like to paint with black, with, the grays and stuff like that. And I know there are a lot of artists out there that do that. They like to sketch all their light in black and white, and then they'll start introducing their colors and do all their shifts and stuff that way. I like to just skip that step. I like to go right in with the colors that I'm using. And then I'm going to work from there to kind of develop each surface with the nuanced colors, the shifts that we're going to do. But yeah, I do like to kind of just sketch everything in, and kind of break the model down into how it's going to move.
From your experience, what were the most difficult techniques for you to learn and master? Like, skin, eyes, blending, shadows, non metallic metal?
Non-metallic metals. I am such a technical painter. I'm not, like, we always joke, I'm not much of an artist as it comes to that free artistry. I always joke that I can't even draw stick figures. But when I learned to paint, I learned that, there's rules to everything, and how you're going to break a surface down into thirds. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do all these things. And I need to know the whys and hows. And non-metallic metals is a real, you have to kind of, I guess we always say in painting, the rules are the rules until you break the rules. And there's always reasons for why something works better this way than that way. And non-metallic metals is very much that way. You need to understand and learn reflections in light. And that once you learn reflections in light, then you need to take about half of what you know and throw that out the window. I was grilling Andy Wardell. I love his paint. I love his paint. His non-metallic metals. I love them. And I was sitting there and I'm like, I got the model in front of us and I'm like, so, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I get why you put this light right here, but why did you put your secondary light there? And he's like, just because that's where it needed to go. Right. But why? And he's like, it doesn't matter. And I could not understand that. And it drove me nuts because I needed to know the whys. Why is it reflect? And he was just like, yeah, just put in a secondary reflection. Doesn't matter where it is. Just put one in. And that did not make any sense to me at all. And it wasn't until I really started just kind of painting a little more free with my non-metallic metals. And all of a sudden, you do just whatever looks cool, whatever looks good for you. It's not the rules. It's not the process. You just place it there. And that's a hard one for me. And that it took a long time for that stretch to get there. And I still don't feel by any means that I have mastered non-metallic metals. But it's probably my hardest.
Of all the community painted engrons, yours is absolutely, the best I have ever seen. Like, I wish I could paint like that. Seriously.
I'm very pleased with that.
All right. So, do you use just non-acrylic paints, or do you work with like oils or something like that? Something to change it up.
Yeah. In the past, I used oils a lot, especially with weathering and, the only issue that I have with oils is they're so messy. And I am one of those people that I'm going to put my hand in my palette. I'm going to reach for one color and put my hand in the palette. So I tend to stay away from oils just literally because of that reason. They're so messy and I don't like the terpenoid and I don't like all of that stuff. I found ways around that by using like isopropyl with inks. Works really good, and I can mimic a lot of the techniques, not all of them. I can mimic a lot of the techniques that you can do with oils. When it comes to vehicles and stuff like that, you can't replace oils. They're such an integral part in that. So there are some non-acrylics, not very many.
I interviewed this other gentleman, this great miniature painter called Alessandro Gobi, and he started using water-soluble acrylics, which is, really easy to go. And he says he likes the drying time, but it kind of acts sort of like an oil.
Yeah, if you're really interested in that and really getting into the oils and all that stuff and the water solubles, is take a look at that stuff that James Wapple is doing. He is almost purely painting in just oils now, and dude, it's amazing. It's amazing. I can't get over the feel of it, and I can't get over the mess. There's a couple things I took that class with Carol, where we used oils to paint the skin on a bust, and man, did I struggle with that class, because oils are just so different than acrylics with how you build colors on top of each other and how they blend through each other and all this stuff. And it's so foreign to me. I'd like to eventually get back and re-explore those. But right now I got so many other projects on the table and other things I really want to learn. that I'm going to probably avoid those for a little bit.
All right, let's talk a little bit about longevity. Let's say you've been painting all night, like you pull an all nighter, the next day you keep painting. So, what are some of the best ways that you battle fatigue?
Man, you know what? I, I don't know if there's a good answer for that, because when you fatigue, um, I found sometimes you got to just step away from painting and go do something else. Um, for a while there, right when I really got into the teaching and I was still doing a lot of commission painting, I got so burned out on painting that I didn't even want to go into the studio, because if you walked in the studio, I knew there were models in there that needed to be painted. It's part of the commission. I'm putting it off, blah, blah, Um, what it took was I had to go back out, and I got back on my bike, started racing a little bit, started doing some of the stuff that I had kind of quit doing for a bit because I was doing so much painting, because I was doing so much hobby. It just rekindled the desire to paint, and next thing you knew, I was back in the studio painting. So that usually helps sometimes. That's more of a long-term fix if you're really starting to not enjoy painting, like you just, and I get it. Sometimes you put out that fantastic model that you don't know you'll ever top, and you kind of question, like, well, where do I go from now? I was talking with a couple of high-end artists. I'm not gonna say their names because I don't want to call them out, but they were talking to me about that struggle that they have right now. They've reached these peaks, and they've gotten to these points, where these summits where they thought it was unsurmountable. They're painting, and they're looking at all these artists that they want to be as good as, and that they want to be on that level. And then, the next thing you know, they're beating them in competitions, and they're like, man, I've kind of lost my fire. I don't know where to go. I don't know what I want to do. Um, and it happens. It happens to all of us. It'll happen to the regular gamer that sat and cranked out an entire army, and he did the grind for 70,000 orcs. You process them where you're painting all green, all green, all green, all brown, all brown, all brown. That's a big burnout, right? That'll kill you. So mixing it up, if you're in that process to where you're trying to crush an army, take a step back, go paint something fun. Go find a model you're just super interested in, go play with it. And don't worry about the results. Don't paint it that it needs to be a competition level, or that it needs to be something. Just go enjoy it. That's a good short term, we call them palette cleansers. You shift to something else. Go do something else. Go find some new paints. Maybe put your paints aside and go grab some new paints and go paint with some new paints. That will help with creating more interest. Switch your brushes. There's all these little things that you can do to kind of get rid of the paint fatigue.
So one of the things that get me is that I'm painting this huge tile project. Like it's taking me 3 years to get done. And I'm like digging in, but somebody had told me on the internet, there's like no way you're going to be able to finish this. So, that's the one guy who doubted me is keeping me going throughout that, and I keep the boxes out to remind me, hey, you still need to paint, you still need to get through it. And the thing with me is, like, when I chose that project and I chose the tile project, it was because I was afraid of painting white. And in painting white, I had to overcome that. So I just kept on painting white after white after white after white. Like, I became burnt out. Like, I got to admit it. Even now, I have to take little projects on the side and, work on something else, because if not, I really get burned out here. But I'm only one box left, It's just.
Yeah, that happens. That's some of the cycles I go through. The reason I started painting my Imperial Fists was I had painted so many red armies. It just seemed like at the time everybody wanted something painted red, and I love World Eaters. And I bought a couple of the Blood Warrior boxes. I converted them all into Berserkers and all this stuff, and I had this great idea of 7th edition Berserker, list and all of this stuff, and super excited. That tells you how long ago that was. I was starting this project, and I got into it and I got like a squad or two done, and I'm like, I cannot paint red anymore. I'm done. And then the Primaris Marines dropped, and I loved the models. They were so fantastic. I want to paint something besides red. And I was like thinking, when the Primaris came out, I'm like, I'm going to do them Blood Angels because I love those close combat-y armies, obviously loving World Eaters. Didn't want to do World Eaters. I wanted to do them as loyalists. So I'm like, Blood Angels. I looked at it, I'm like, dude, I'm not doing golden red again. I'm not doing golden red. I've already done so many armies in golden red. I don't want to do it. So I was like, what can I do that's totally different? I'm like, I'm going to do yellow. And yeah, you know, so that's fun. My next one's going to be World Eaters, but I'm going to make sure that I'm doing 30K World Eaters. I'm going to do white and blue. Just something nice, something fresh.
All right, this one's a tough one for me because sometimes I lack inspiration. So, what I personally do, I'll go outside in the backyard, I'll take some pictures. Like, I love photography, so I get into that and I look at the colors and stuff like that. If I'm going to paint something that's corroded or metal, it's corrosion, I'll take a picture of something that's corroded, and people look at me weird because I'm like taking picture of the weirdest things you could possibly imagine. And I get inspiration. Like, I get inspiration from, online. I get inspiration from nature and from life. I get inspiration from everything. And everybody thinks I'm crazy because I'm going around snapping picture of literally like snails and like bugs and stuff like that, So and there's the big question here, where do you get your inspiration from?
Man, it's a mix. There's so, I mean, man, how do I just look at a piece and I look at that piece and that's the inspiration, because you look at the piece and the piece can kind of tell you how it's going to be painted. And, the more that I look online, the more I'm influenced by stuff. And you get these little nuggets in the back of your head. You'll be looking through Putty and Paint, or you'll be looking on Warcom or whatever, and you see someone paint something and you're like, that's fantastic. This last Angron article, one of the other artists painted Angron kind of in a real pale white color. I got to go over to his Instagram and saw a close-up of Angron's face. And I love the way he did that guy's eyes. And it's one of those things that it just files away. And at some point, I'm going to be painting something, and it's going to hit. It's going to click. You're going to be like, I want it to look something like kind of like that, And yeah, so a lot of my inspiration comes from a lot of just the influences of stuff that you see around you, the ideas that you see around you, and then the ideas you have in your head. I love to imagine, especially when it comes to like my tabletop stuff. I love to imagine those guys like in a scene, like as they're fighting, as they're, and what they're doing and all that stuff. And how would their armor look? How would this look? How would that look? What atmosphere am I trying to create with it? The new Arbites, cannot wait to start painting the new Arbites, because I just keep picturing this very, it's these inspiration looks, right? You've got a little bit of that Total Recall-esque light fixture sourcing with throw in maybe a little bit of The Expanse, and the Martian troopers, with Bobby in her mechanical suit, and how they made it futuristic, but they made it more military-esque, police-esque, you know what I mean? So yeah, those influences, and you look at that model and you're just like, man, I can see this model going in that direction. And that's and then sometimes you do need to get online. Like if you're unsure and you got an idea in your head of how you want to paint it, but you're not exactly sure, go online, go look that up, and go look like, you want to paint a Vindicare assassin. Go look up black leather, and get pictures of that. Go look up, Marvel characters, Black Widow, and look at a lot of the comic book art. Those guys are fantastic about creating shifts in color and light and stuff like that. And they'll give you great ideas because they have to play a lot with color and light to create interest. You're always seeing counter colors. And, you think about it, you look back on like a Black Widow comic book, you look at Black Widow, she's going to have underlighting of red with upper lighting of blue. And you're going to see contrast and everything like that. Those guys are the masters at that stuff. So usually when I'm looking for inspiration on how to go about painting something, I don't too much look at models. I look a lot at art. I want to go look at, because the 2D guys are the guys that are really nailing like how to create shape and value. I mean, that's what we're doing with our miniatures. We're applying 2D techniques onto a 3D surface, but to create value and shape, we have to use those 2D techniques. So looking at art is usually some of my favorite. That's usually where I get most of my inspiration is once I have ideas.
You opened my eyes to something. I'm going to start listening to my models a little more and really, get onto looking at a miniature and really getting into what does it call for? What does it beg to be painted as, which I struggle with, but, there comes a time in your life, right, where you take painting serious. Like it no longer becomes a game for the tabletop, and it becomes something that you want to be competitive at, something you want to really push yourself to the next level with. So my question for you is, when did you start painting seriously, and what makes you think that you're a pro painter? Like, did you get to that echelon?
I took a class with an artist, Matthew Fontaine. Those of you guys have been in this hobby for a while, you guys will recognize that name. He was, huge in the scene at the time. He was, winning competitions all over the place, and he was that French blending style. But he did a class in Walnut Grove, something like that, California. Like kind of central, almost kind of Bay Area, but kind of central. Of all things, it was in a Games Workshop store run by Seth Amsden. So everybody knows the hobby sensei, Seth Amsden. In the class was Justin McCoy from Secret Weapon. He brought his first like prototype bases were in that class. Bryce Kokenauer, I want to say Kilman. There's so many guys in there that are all like, staples in the hobby now for painters. We were all at that class, and it shifted this idea of miniatures being painted just to put on the tabletop and play, to miniatures being something more, something that you can develop and really develop all that technique and learn and push yourself and strive. And that was the big kicker. Finishing his class, I followed that up with that first Golden Demon I was telling you about, or the first game day. That was about 3 months later. And then to get to sit with all those artists, that are paying at that level. It was that whole little section right there. It was that 6 month period that just opened my eyes to that miniature painting was so much more than gaming. And I still, even at that point, I still game. We were still playing Ard Boys. We were still going to Adepticon and playing in the GT, doing all that stuff. But slowly painting took over to where, I was going to the GT and I was losing the majority of my games at Adepticon at the GT because I strictly picked my army based on what I wanted to paint. Like it wasn't based on the meta. It wasn't based on what was powerful. It was what I wanted to paint. Sixth edition, I showed up with Belial and Terminators. That was like my entire army was Belial and Terminators. 6th edition Terminators were terrible. They were like the worst thing. In fact, I always share this with my students. One of the comments I got from one of the guys I played was, this was the most beautiful army that I've ever utterly decimated. I mean, he tabled me. I want to say I was tabled in like second or third round, but No, Waffle got me. Waffle, Waffle. I want to say that that was the year that Waffle did the Sisters of Battle on with the big cathedral and everything. I mean, gorgeous, gorgeous. Yeah. No, I never did beat Waffle. Never did beat him.
I mean, speaking of people you look
Yeah.
up to, I mean, I look at your work. I like the work on the Agron alone. You know, it blows my mind. Like you say, you're chasing James Wapple, right? So I'm chasing that kind of Angron. In fact, I bought myself an Angron itself because of that.
Um, I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm going to be painting another Angron. Um, obviously, those who don't know, as we were at LVO, the first day of setup, I put my case with Angron, the new Horus Ascended, and Vulcan over with all my class gear, the palette that had all my class gear. It was sitting on a bag that had probably $7,000 in airbrushes in it, and somebody we think it was staff. I don't think it was anybody in the community. Um, but yeah, someone grabbed that case. So yeah, yes.
I cast a plague on the person that took that box. I mean, really.
And it was such a bummer. Not not because I lost the models I paint. I can always go back and paint those models. You know, the bummer was is that Angron wasn't released yet. It was going to be like everybody was going to finally get to see him in person. Horace had just released. I think he was on pre-sale that week, so everybody was going to get to see them in person. You get to see them in the case and all of that stuff. And yeah, it was a big bummer. Um, so I'm going to repaint them, but now because he's already released now, because the NDA's up on him and all that stuff. I'm gonna paint him on stream. I'm gonna try to stream a bunch of what I did. So my next goal is to start doing a bit more video work, a bit more live work. Um, I get asked that so much. I get asked that so much. So many people are like, dude, please put out some videos, put out what you're doing. And I don't like teaching on video. I really like that one-to-one experience with people. That's why I love teaching. Like I can't replace that. The aha moments and watching students and the smile on their face when they figure out a technique. You know, I love all that, and you just don't get that online. It's so hard for me. Um, but I do want to get more out there because I get asked so much, and it's definitely not that we're trying to hide our technique because we want people to come to classes, we want to do all that stuff. It's just I've never really enjoyed painting under camera. It's just kind of monotonous. I like to when I'm painting at home, I like to turn on music and listen to my music and get into painting and stuff like that. So to paint under a camera without being in a class, being with people, having that atmosphere, it's really hard to do it. So I'm going to make it my goal. I'm really going to try to do that. I think Twitch is going to be the platform I'm going to do it on, just because when it comes to like YouTube, I think a lot of people expect if you're going to watch a YouTube video, it needs to be an instructional video. It needs to be this is how you do this. I'm going to walk you through this and that and that. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit and do instructoral, however you say it, videos. I want to be a little more freeform. I want to be more free painting, and I think Twitch is more that style. I love the OBS, the system that you get to put behind Twitch, to where you have all the multiple cameras. I like the camera on my palette, I like the camera on what I'm painting, and all of that stuff. So I think that's going to be the platform, and then of course I'll cross stream it. It'll go on YouTube, it'll go on Facebook Live, and it'll go on Twitter and stuff like that. You know, everything that CK Studio needs to have a presence on. But yeah, I want it to be very open and more of a kind of a paint experience, not really a paint instruction. And I hope I can teach people. I'll explain what I'm doing. Like I'm putting this here because of this and that, but it's going to be a little more free flowing, a little more free form. So I think I'm going to do that on Twitch.
I mean, speaking of, teaching and learning, at the Nova Open, I really hope to, I'm pushing myself to be able to paint a piece. And the piece needs to be, just right, because I'm going up against some heavy hitters, especially in the master's class, and I'm really trying to push myself and learn as much as possible, taking classes whenever I can. Like whenever I go to the Nova Open, or any kind of like event, I rarely play, I just take the classes and I learn and I push myself as a painter and I keep pushing myself. So, I mean, are you going to enter the Nova Open? Are you something I have to worry about?
We'll, most likely I'll probably be judging it. That has been one of the crosses I guess I got to bear. I hate to say that, sounds so bad. Because of a lot of the experience I've had, and building the Draconic Awards and doing all that stuff, I get asked a lot to judge. And
Man, I don't envy you. It seems like a tough job.
that's a two-edged sword. Part of it I really enjoy. Sometimes, I mean, when you got to sit and you need to judge Kaha and Will and Eric and Stephen Garcia and all those guys are entering, and you got to sit there and judge their pieces. And the whole time I'm looking at them, I got to judge them. I'm like, I don't think I can paint to this level. That's hard. That is so hard, but then other times, you really enjoy it because you get to get the models right in your hand, and you get to, so it's really cool. I mean, unfortunately, it means that at a lot of events I don't get to enter. And honestly, I haven't really, I'm kind of okay with that because I haven't really had the time or the energy to put towards competition painting. Biggie Will is really pushing that in me. Like every time I sit down and talk with him, I was just talking with him at LVO, and every time I sit down and talk with him, I walk away, I'm just like inspired, like I want to enter some stuff. I want to start painting competition. I want to start doing this. I want to start doing that. So slowly I'm going to start working my way back. I got a couple of pieces that I'm kind of eyeballing right now that I would like to do. I just picked up this gorgeous piece. Here's the artwork for it that it's going to be quite time intensive, but I really want to finish this piece. I want to paint this.
That looks amazing. My God, Caleb.
I have got some ideas of how I want to do that. I've got that, and then a couple of other pieces that I'm eyeballing. I just got to get through my workload. I got to get through this stuff. I got to get done with GW and stuff like that. And if I can get through that workload, I can start working on some other projects.
So you have this artist, like let's say someone just starting out, right? And they're kind of like learning, going through the hard knocks of things, and the process of learning. And so, if you're planting words of wisdom to somebody, like you really want them to improve to the next level, like even if they're at a mid-tier level and they want to make to the next level to become like professional, what advice would you give to them? What would you tell someone to really, really work on?
Structure, foundation for miniature painting.
And is there something else, like something deeper?
Learn light placement. It really, I mean, you paint non-metallic metals. Non-metallic metals, you don't really want to blend too much. The sharper they are, the more metallic, the more reflective they are, stuff like that. When you do skin, you want to blend, really, really blend. So each surface or different technique that you're using is going to use a different tool, a different technique. So blending is super important. Like you can't forego blending, but blending isn't the end all beat all. Being able to paint texture is not the end all beat all. Those things is controlling light. Controlling light is the end all beat all. Whatever technique you're doing, you're still, again, we're painting 2D techniques onto a 3D model. To explain that is, when we're painting a miniature, we want it to have value in shape. And to do that, we have to cheat the system because when we're looking at something that's in scale, our eye still sees light in the 1-to-1 scale. So you've got a miniature that's 1/35th scale, but you're looking at it with an eye that sees light in a 1:1 scale. So if we took that 1/35th scale miniature and we blew it up to full size, let's say we're painting a Primaris Space Marine, and we're going to paint an Ultramarine. You blow him up to full scale, and he's 9 feet tall. You could take Ultramarine blue and just paint the model, and he would have every highlight, he'd have every shadow, he'd have color nuance, reflection, all of that stuff. But when you shrink that model down to that scale, he loses the ability of light to reflect properly on him. When you're watching, I always talk about, like, this is part of my class, but when you're watching those really crappy B movies, and you see Godzilla attacking Tokyo, and you see all the guys running, and they're pointing and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden it shows Godzilla. You can totally tell the little helicopter that's flying by Godzilla is a model. You totally tell it is. But then you go watch Star Wars, and you watch the TIE fighters flying through the channel in the Death Star, chasing the X-wings, and it doesn't get that feel of a model. And it's because those guys mastered the ability of giving shape and value to that model, cheating the eye, cheating the system. That's what we're doing when we paint miniatures. We're cheating the system. We're making them see light and values that aren't there. That's why we put shadow. That's why we paint with triads. Why we paint with a midtone and a highlight and a shadow. Is we're cheating the eye. Non-metallic metals, painting with texture, true metallic metals. I mean, every technique that we're painting is tricking the eye. We're tricking the eye to see stuff that isn't there, create value, create shape, create volume. Learning light is critical for that. And my painting changed once I learned, hey, you got to control light. And then at that point, buckle down and learn the techniques. Blending is extremely important. You do need to blend. You need to learn blending. Even if you get to the point where you're as good as Alfonso, and he can say, hey, we've all heard the little thing, F smoothness. F smoothness should be a flexing of your ability to paint, not a cheat to not paint. It's not a shortcut to not blend. It's I have developed my ability with light so well that I don't need to blend. James Wapple, fantastic example of that. Used to kill me. I used to get so frustrated. I'd go to Golden Demon, and I've got this model that's so well blended and just worked all this stuff on it. And then James would beat me with arguably layering. His mastery of light, like, that dude can paint with light like no other. It surpasses the ability to be technically flawless, because it just creates value, creates shape, creates atmosphere, it creates everything. But he can do that because if you look at his paint, dude, that guy can blend. That guy can do anything. But he paints in the style he paints, and it's amazing. So, develop your style that way, but learn light. I would say that is probably the most critical technique to learn.
So whenever I paint the model, I mean, all I see is the mistakes. And when I look at your Angron, all I see is like near perfection.
Oh, there's so many mistakes on that model. There's so many mistakes. And a lot of times I was telling you about how you start painting on a model, and you start to rough it in. You start to rough that model in. You're going to start doing the basic shapes of it. The model develops. And as I was painting Angron, he developed. I didn't start out wanting to paint the textures that I painted on it. I went in and I was going to be like, man, I really am going to paint him to this really super smooth, super flawless skin. I'm going to use the techniques of mixing the airbrush and the paintbrush together and really create this super smooth skin. And as I painted him, I'm just like, dude, this guy's not about super smooth skin. This guy's brutal. This guy's like brutal, So I was like, how do I make that and communicate that to the viewer? And those influences, right? I look back and I was thinking about Will Hahn painted this Oni model, and he's really cool. He's like a, Oni is one of the Japanese demon type guys, and he's standing like in front of like a, oh goodness, kind of like a temple, and it's got all these bushes and trees around him. It's all really great, and he's red, like dominant red. But he went in and he did this skin tone texture where it was just these little lines, like line after line after line after line, and they all built up on you, and it gave this kind of ripply skin, like just textured skin. And I was like, that's what Angron needs. That's Angron is, he's brutal. He's not smooth. He should be so cut up and scarred and just, from his period of battles and all that stuff. So yeah, I just decided, and I shifted focus at that point, and I did that. So now when I do Angron, because I know the direction I want to go right from the get-go, I can shape him a lot better. I think his light will be a little better. I think his shape will be a little bit better. Some of the ideas I played with, I kind of mastered by the end of it. I wouldn't say mastered, but I fine-tuned them by the end of it to where I think he'll be a lot sharper when I get into that. So yeah, I'm going to change that a bit.
All right, so I use a color wheel when I do my choices for color schemes, but how do you choose your color schemes and on what to paint and how to paint it?
The first thing I'm going to do is kind of like with the Imperial Fists. I'm going to choose a color scheme that I want to paint. Like if I've been painting a ton of red, I don't want to go back to red again. I want to paint something different, make that palette cleanser, make a change there. The other thing is a lot of times when I'm looking at a model and I determine how I'm going to paint that model, I'm going to get an idea of kind of some of the techniques I want. And some techniques work better with certain colors than others. Let's say I'm going to paint a dreadnought and I want him to be really chipped up. I'm going to avoid painting him Raven Guard or Sons of Horus or something into the darker scheme, because chipping doesn't really show up too well on those. I'm going to choose a lighter model, something brighter, so the chipping really shows up and I can really determine how I want to do that and really focus and showcase that. So that's how I'm going to kind of choose a color scheme. The other thing is going to be is when you're looking at that model, you're going to have like an ambiance with it, right? You're going to have this idea of where he should be. What he's looking at, man, is it going to be a snow scene? Is it going to be a forest scene? I mean, it could be the exact same model, and you might decide, hey, I want to paint this model white as it's a Lumineth. Let's say I'm going to paint a Lumineth elf. If it's in a forest, I'm going to shift more towards a little bit more of a warmer color palette color scheme. So I'll probably introduce more greens and more yellows and stuff like that. Whereas let's say that same Lumineth, I want to paint him in more of a winter scene, and I really want to do like some ice and some stuff like that. I can still paint in those same blues that, that would be the white and blues of the Lumineth, but I'm going to make sure that those colors are very cool. Everything that I'm introducing in there is going to be more cool, trying to create that atmosphere. So, and that even comes all the way down to like my tabletop gaming models. It might not be super, super nuanced and go to real heavy detail, but I want my Imperial fists to be very warm and very harsh because they're going to be like on a Martian landscape. So, my accent colors, my browns and my grays and all that stuff need to be on the warmer side. So things like that.
So I'm a teacher, so I keep on getting questions upon questions upon questions. So what's the number one question that you get asked?
The number one question I get asked.
Yeah, like, they're just rapid firing, shooting questions. On an average, like, what is the most repetitive one that you keep on getting asked over and over?
Man, I don't think I have like a number. I'm trying to think of like a number one question. We go into those classes with really establishing like trust the process. What we're going to show you is our techniques. They might not match how you paint, but we're going to really encourage you to just try this technique. try this style of painting, and if you don't like it, you don't like it, but at least give it a try. And that paint bravely type idea of just go with it. So because of that, we don't necessarily get asked a lot, like right off the get-go, for our classes, like I can't even think of what questions we get asked, because we kind of head that off. Now in class, we get asked a ton, what color should I use? Like, so many people really struggle with choosing color and understanding, like, where should I use this color and why should I use this color? And we all have a different take on color and using color. In our classes, Kat will tell everybody at the start of the class, you're going to have a lot of questions, and to most of the questions come to me, and you can ask either of us. And she goes, but however, when it comes to a color question, only go ask Caleb. Because I'm going to tell you something that is exactly opposite of what Caleb is going to tell you. And when he shows up, it's going to be something different. Sometimes they match up. A lot of times it's different, because we all have our own kind of experiences with color, and we all understand and see color in different ways, and we're all influenced by different colors. Everybody has their favorite color, everybody has their favorite look, stuff like that. So we get asked that a lot, and that's a very open question, because I'll help at the beginning of the class. I'll really help the students along. I will, like, okay, we're going to use this blue, and this is why we're going to use this blue. Once we get kind of into the class, I start asking them, well, what do you think? You choose the color. And I really want the students to learn to choose colors, because if a color doesn't work, paint over it. Just repaint it. You don't have to be scared of any of that stuff. So don't be afraid to try out and flex colors. There are rules to follow. There are certain things you want to do, blue and yellow as a highlight color. When you're mixing that with whatever color you're using, it's going to create different values, going to create different temperatures. It's going to create those things, so you want to stay within those rules. That's where those books, James Gurney and Figopedia, are so important, is because it teaches you a lot of why colors do what they do and why you want to introduce those things. So we get asked that a lot. It's not really a question, but I always have to tell every one of my students is go brighter. Like, everybody is so hesitant to paint bright and to keep pushing and to really maximize contrast and stuff like that. So I'm always telling students, paint brighter, go brighter, go brighter, go brighter.
That's one of the reasons why I'm tempted by those Chimera paints, to go brighter and brighter, All right, so let's switch gears here. I know how long it takes me to paint like a standard 32 millimeter model, and that could take anywhere from 1 to 3 days. And I know that's like rookie numbers for you, possibly. I don't know, but how long would it take you to complete a standard 32-inch miniature?
It's really going to depend. If I'm just painting it for myself and I just want to have fun with it, probably a weekend. I'll probably paint it in a couple of days, creating the shape, creating the values, creating whatever the idea is. If I want to push myself, if that model has inspired me so much that I want to push to a display level, I'm gonna probably give it a couple weeks, because I'll probably start to break down and really start to refine and detail stuff. And then if it hooks, and I haven't done it in a long time, but if it really hooks, I'll go into competition painting, and you're talking 100 hours. So yeah, there's no real time limit on that. Most competition pieces, in my experience, are never finished. I get to the point where it's like, I need to enter this thing in a competition so that I quit painting on it, because you always know those areas you just don't like, and and their competition models are so great, is they're making you stretch your abilities and push your abilities so much that if you ever get to the point where you're happy with it, that's it. I've never hit that point, so I don't know. I've never hit a model and went, I am done. Like, I'm finished. this is ready for competition. I've never hit that point. I'm like, oh man, I got 20 minutes left before cutoff. I got to get hold on, wait, 2 more dots, that type stuff. Um, for the most part, the majority of my painting I've been doing like in the last 2 years, I would say it falls onto that weekend level of painting. I usually can crank out a model in about 10 to 12 hours of painting. I'll finish up a model.
So on the social media side of things, like I see you on Facebook, and you have an Instagram, and but one of the things that I used to remember is that you guys used to post things on Hobby Hangout, and I'm still a member of Hobby Hangout, so
I haven't really been active in Hobby Hangout. You know, um, we just we're so busy with all the stuff that we're doing with the painting and stuff like that. I really don't have much of a um, social media presence. Uh, I have Instagram. I'm terrible at posting on it. You'll see a new Instagram post on mine about every 6 weeks or so. So I'm really terrible about that. And then I remember, oh man, I need to post on Instagram, and then I'll flood it with a couple, and I'm like, I'm gonna, I got like 6 pieces. I'm gonna do a piece every day for like the next 6 weeks, and then I'll get about 3 days into it, and then I'll forget. And yeah, so I'm really terrible about that. So I do have Instagram. You can look us up at CK Studios. Um, Twitch, I'm really hoping that this works out and I get excited about it, and I push more on that. My plan is to just when I sit down and paint, and I paint very irregularly. So it is not going to be like this super regular, like, to come on at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, and Twitch is going to be, it might be there, it might not. It might, I don't know how well it's going to work. I'm probably not going to have a lot of followers. Uh, but I just want to be able to do that, like when I can sit down and paint and hit. And I'm kind of hoping that part of Twitch folds over to where maybe I do get that bug to paint a little more regularly and be like, hey, I'm gonna lock out the time to come paint on Wednesday at 7 p.m. I'm gonna try to do that every Wednesday. And that would be kind of neat. It's gonna be hard though. I'm painting a lot of stuff that I can't show. So yeah, and you want to show that stuff. It's really hard to go from a model you're super excited about painting to go to another model that you're not so excited about, to make sure that you're doing a Wednesday stream and stuff like that. So but yeah, I'm really hoping that the Twitch feed takes off. So kind of keep your eyes out for that. Honestly, if you want to come paint with CK Studios, if you want to do some stuff with us, hit us at the events that we're going to be at. We're going to be at all of the Games Workshop open GTs. I almost let out some events that I don't know are posted yet. So look for us at some of the Games Workshop events, some of the stuff that's going to be announced soon. We are doing classes at all of those. Really fun classes, non-metallic metal classes, airbrushing classes, regular paint classing, contrast classes, like really fun stuff. Nothing super time intensive. The master classes will be like 5-hour classes, 4-hour classes. But other than that, most of the classes are all 2 or 3 hour classes. Just enough to really kind of teach the techniques and stuff like that. So they're going to be pretty fun. The nice thing about all those classes are they are leveraged against the model. So the idea that Games Workshop has is that they want the students to get at least 110% back from the cost of the class. So for instance, if you go into the non-metallic metals class and it's $60, you're going to get a model that's approximately a $20 or $30 model, whatever, their price ranges for that model. But then you're also going to get probably $30 or $40 in paints and paintbrushes and that, so that you're walking away from that class with 110%. That's our goal. Now, sometimes it won't hit. Obviously, the Titan class, that was 100 or $1,500. The Titan with everything, with the guns and all that stuff, was approximately about $800. I think all the paints they got, the airbrush paints, all that stuff, you end up getting about $1,000 in product out of that class. Maybe a little more. I don't know exactly what the number was. That one was pretty hard to hit, like 110% of. But you're getting a Titan and you're getting 3 days of painting, you know. So that that was such a fun class too. We really enjoyed that class. Um,
I mean, looking at the social media, your freehand is amazing.
we didn't get to do freehand in the class, which was such a bummer because that's one of my favorite surfaces to do freehand on. I love Knights and Titans. They're so much fun, to do a lot of the freehand that I like doing. So we didn't get to do that because they ended up making the Titans part of the grand narrative. So part of the story on the last day, all of the Titans played in a game. All the Titans won. It was really fun. It was so cool. I mean, the whole thing, that whole grand narrative event was just so mind-boggling amazing. The immersion that they did it, and I'm talking to a couple of my friends here about it, after the event, and all of them are like, dude, next year I'm going. Like, I wish I wasn't working it because I would love to go play it. I mean, it's the I don't know if everybody remembers the old was that the D3 guys, or I want to say they were called D3. It was a group of guys on the West Coast that would do like a narrative event, but it was so immersive. And I'd watch those guys do it every year. It was so cool looking. I always wanted to get invited to it just because the whole storyline. And, they were doing like these big campaigns, almost like the Solar Macarius campaign that was all written out back in the day and stuff like that. They were doing campaigns like that. And that's kind of how this grand narrative was this year. So yeah, that was pretty cocool. The Titan class there. And then of course we're going to be at all the big cons. We'll be at Gen Con, we'll be at Nova. I'm at Adepticon. Unfortunately, that class is already sold out. Those classes sell out so fast, it's crazy. But yeah, yeah. So we'll be there. We'll be there. We'll be back at Nova again next year. LVO. That's the one that we just finished. We're going to be doing a little bit different. I know a lot of people were kind of bummed that we were only doing the master class there, and it's only limited to like 12 students, and it's very limited in how everything would work. It was a little expensive and limited and stuff like that. So next year, I think we're going to be doing more of the convention style classes, so that we get to get with more people and kind of do more with the frontline guys are really taking care of us over there. So we want to, yeah,
One of the coolest things about hanging out in Nova Open was to meet all the people. Like, I got to hang out with Vince Ventuella and, all the people that you see on the YouTubes. And it is so cool and so much fun to hang out with, all the people. It's just like you have a little club, like the people that get it, the people that miniature paint, which is so cool. So I don't know if you're going to attend the Nova Open this year, man. We definitely, have some fun. We get to hang out. I mean, really, it is so
yeah.
cool. I mean, I remember Vince dancing at one point.
I just, man, I'm hoping that we're not as busy this year as we were last year for Nova. It was so crazy busy. Like, it felt like we never stopped, like the whole weekend. So I'm hoping it's a little easier this year. I do want to scale back just a little bit.
I remember the last time I went to the Nova Open, it was Kat Jackson who actually did some, pouring onto these tiles, and it was just so cool and so artistic in a different way. It was awesome to see that. I kind of wanted to take that class.
Yeah, very artistic, very artistic. We're so opposite, like when we paint, just because she's like just one painting. She's just not about technique, not about any of that stuff. It's just the flow, And I'm technical. I'm breaking everything down. I'm like, how do I do this? How do I do that? Type thing. So
It just dawned on me, if you're going to be one of the judges for the Nova Open, then I just got to get my technical skill up.
actually, don't do that. I I have really tried, and it's been one of my I don't want to call it my pet peeve, but like it's always been my goal. When we started the Draconic Awards, I really wanted artists to get out of the judges. I shouldn't say artists. I wanted the judges to get out of their own heads, get out of their own biasness, and judge the art for the art. You use that example of how do you compare a Monet and a Degas? Which one's better? Which one's better? And then, muddy those waters more is throw a Rembrandt in on top of that. Which one's better? How do you pick what the best is of those? You know, um, it's about appreciating the pieces for what the pieces are. I'm not gonna lie, I do have my little quirky things. There are certain things that I'll look at and I might judge that a little bit more. Usually when I'm judging, I'm really looking at what was the more difficult effort, less about how perfect it was. It's really to blend a light gray to a lighter gray. Very easy. It's very difficult to blend purple into yellow, you know. So maybe it wasn't done as well, but the effort inspired in that, and where they were at. And I really try to put my judging at that level. Um, when you get into this high end stuff, when you're getting into these pieces that they're all so good and they're all those guys have such a great grasp on color and light and just everything. At that point, yeah, you do start looking at where the mistakes were because you've got to try to figure out what's the difference between this Rembrandt and this Degas. You know what I mean? Um, and at that point, yeah, you do have to fall into some of those things that are more quantifiable. Um, but it's hard because you're never gonna please everybody, and you're gonna have a couple of artists that are gonna walk away from it being very upset. They're not gonna be happy with their piece, and I hate saying that. I hate saying that. Um, I would prefer it if we didn't do that, but I don't know a system that would do it. Miniature painting is so subjective, so subjective. So
I try to paint for art's sake, but people who have won awards, they've already achieved that accolade. And well, I mean, when I came in fourth in the master's class for Nova, I was saying to myself over and over again, please don't pin. Please don't pin. Let me get at least a bronze. Please let me get at least a bronze. There's something about a weight of a medal. And I guess once I reached that, oh no, I'll probably have to go for gold, I'm sure. But I'm trying to paint for myself. I'm trying to paint to be a part of something, instead of just painting for, the awards. But that's in the back of my head.
that that is the first thing I tell when people tell me that they want to get into competition painting. The first thing I tell them is paint for yourself. Don't paint for the judges. Paint for the show. When you're painting and you're entering into miniature contests, do it because you want to be part of the show. And don't hang the results as don't hang the results as a quantification of your ability or as a legitimization of your ability, or however you want to term that, because it's so biased. And paint competitions are so up in the air. They're so up in there. You could walk in with a piece that at any other show at any other day would win, and it just happens to not win that day because painter X showed up with some piece that he just knocked out of the park, and something clicked with that piece. And I've seen it. I've seen painters that on the normal don't really place come in and just they have a piece that knocked it out of the park. It speaks to the judges, it speaks to whatever. And there's all those unforeseens. And those are hard. Those are hard to sit at. And then the other thing is um we get very invested in our own pieces. And we have a tendency to go up, and especially at a paint competition, to look at our piece and we look at all the stuff that we did right and we judge it against what the other artist did wrong. And you'll sit there and be like, going back to my example with Wapple, it was so hard for me at first when I got into the competition painting that I felt that my stuff had been painted better because I was so about blending and perfectness in this, and I'm learning from Todd Swinson, and I'm learning from Carol, and I'm learning from these guys who are just flawless painters. And then, you look over at Wapples, and I'm looking at the lack of blending, not looking at what he accomplished. His use of light was so superior to anything I was doing, so superior. And that's why his pieces won. And the judges were recognizing that because the judges saw that. But it's really easy to get caught up in your own kind of like where you need to be and stuff like that. So I always encourage my students, or even anybody that talks to me about competition painting, is paint for yourself. Don't paint for the judges. Pick a model that you really like to paint. Don't pick a model that you think everybody's going to like. Paint something that you want to paint, and then, dude, go for the show. Show up for the show. Enter your models to hopefully inspire people. People are going to see your painting. They're going to be inspired. You're going to hit that one person that absolutely loves purple Soul Drinkers primary, whatever, right? And that guy's going to be like, oh my God. And he's so inspired that he's going to go home and paint all of his stuff. And the next time you see him, he's going to be like, dude, I did this whole army and I won that paint because I saw your model and it inspired me. Those things. Be part of the show. And then if you win a trophy at the end of that, dude, that's just icing on the cake. That's just icing on the cake. But don't go to the event with the sole purpose of winning. Because a lot of times, man, there can only be one winner. Only be one or two or three winners. And some of those judges have to agonize over which piece is going to win. And if you're in there like, my piece should have won, dude, this is just going to sour you. You're going to stop painting. It's not going to be fun. You're going to quit. I can't tell you how many amazing artists, amazing painters don't paint anymore because they got soured about competitions. They were too focused on the results, and it's just too subjective. It's too locked into personal judge bias. This is how it is.
Well, here I am, the little guy, and I'm going to be entering my little piece in the Nova Open against Eric Swinson and the big boys, Well,
I'm rooting for you.
And I appreciate that for sure because, I'm pretty nervous and they are just so talented as compared to me. They're like the next level, but I'm going to keep pushing myself and I'm going to keep growing.
Well, I'm trying to get over there. I'm trying to get over the East Coast. Will is bugging me so much to come over and just go sit down and paint in Baltimore. So, man, I hope you get over there and do stuff. If I can get over there, Adam over there with Warrior Lodge, those guys are always bugging me to come over. And I don't know how far that is from you, but he's like on the outskirts of DC.
That's not far at all, dude. I would kill at the opportunity to hang out with you guys and just paint away.
So, yeah. And I really want to go do those to where it's not an event. It's not, I'm teaching class. It's not, I just want to go hang out. I want to go out and hang out and have fun. I want to sit down and paint for a couple days. Maybe get a game in, play some 30K or something. I don't know, play some kill team, whatever. Get in and relax.
We just really need to get together and hang out and paint, man.
Definitely. I will definitely let you know.
Man, it was a real honor just to hang out with you, dude. And I want to do this. We got to make this happen. We definitely have to hang out together in person. Yeah, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity for coming on the show and spending time with the Miniatures Paintbrush Legion.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I'm honored that you came by today, and it really was an honor. And yeah, man, we definitely have to get together. So just thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
A massive thank you to Caleb Wissenback for spending some time with us today. Well, if you would like to connect with Caleb, check out CK Studios link down below. And if you haven't done so already, consider subscribing for more content. And may you always make conscious efforts to improve your painting style, and may your backlog get ever smaller.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go.